As a CPG brand, you have a lot of choices to make along the journey of your company. One of the most important ones is how to actually go about manufacturing and producing your product to bring it to market. With my company, T Squares, it was a roller coaster of a journey. We went from self-manufacturing in a commercial kitchen, moving to a contract manufacturer, end up having to leave, or more realistically, we got booted from working with them, went back to self-manufacturing, found a second contract manufacturer, which didn't work, and we failed kind of the pilot test, and ultimately decided to produce for the rest of the company in our own production space and build that out. It is a lot of headache and difficult decisions, but also can really set the pace and tone for your company, how you grow, and your capabilities. So for today's webinar, I really want to dive into how to build a manufacturing strategy with the end in mind for your company so that you can make some of those best decisions early on that are going to set the trajectory for your company. So for this conversation, I have invited on Rick and Katie from JPG Resources, who are experts in this space, to really walk through some of these considerations. At the end of this, hopefully you'll have a better understanding of how to better plan your manufacturing strategy, whether you are just beginning for the first time or if you're a few years into your journey. Rick and Katie, welcome to the show today.
Hi,
Thank you, Jordan.
Jordan.
Awesome. So, Rick, starting with you, I'd love for you to just give a quick introduction to yourself.
Sure. Well, I've been in the food business over 35 years now, hence all the gray hair that you see. But the first part of my career was on the manufacturing side. In fact, over half my career has been as both an ingredient manufacturer and then a co-manufacturer of finished CPG goods. So I have that experience behind me. After that, I worked more on the brand side and worked with brands now at JPG certainly, and support their journey and providing operations and supply chain support.
I love that. And Katie, how about you?
Yeah, I started my food career on the brand side. Rick and I actually worked together. It was for a nutritional bar brand. From there, I moved into the frozen space and found my way over to consulting with JPG. Before that, did some work in sales, contracting, and procurement, which all lends a hand for what I do today.
Awesome. So I absolutely love that. Let's get into it. Do you want to give an overview of kind of what we'll be discussing today?
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about types of manufacturing. So like you said, Jordan, self-manufacturing, commercial kitchens, co-mans, um, understanding some of the costs, whether that's time or money or both. How do you choose a co-man? Aligning your business with that co-man and how you manufacture, making sure that the quality of your product is maintained as you scale production, and then future-proofing your business and making sure you're tracking all of it along the way.
I love it. Yep, all things that I had to experience firsthand and anyone is going through as well.
Yeah, and really, Jordan, you've pretty well described already what we say on this slide as far as the path that you can take with self-production, which I think is a key first step for many. It allows you to really learn more about your food, to finalize formulas, and get a good understanding of what is needed to make it on a commercial scale, and also gives you an opportunity to get samples, for sales samples, for investor samples, for just to get out there and kind of test your concept. Then the commercial kitchen to allow you some scale to service your emerging business there until such time as you are co-man ready, as we say, going to a contract manufacturer with a business plan that is enticing to them to bring you on as a brand there.
You know, it's interesting because one thing, just to share that experience with T Squares, was that we were making energy bars essentially, but instead of going through the traditional kind of extruded method or slab method, I ended up kind of tinkering with the product and essentially building our own grid-shaped molds for the product. And we would hand press them in imagine just like a 1 inch by 1 inch grid, and they're half an inch thick, and that's what we use to manufacture our products. So they're kind of like these bite-sized squares. What I didn't understand as I got started out was that their production equipment to scale energy protein bars, there's those three methods: slat method, extrusion, and like a rotary molder essentially. And the rotary molding method was the most expensive and complex, but I had no idea at the beginning. And if I knew that from the beginning, we probably would have chose a production method, along like the slab method that could work. And that's where we ended up experiencing our issues, is that very few manufacturers could actually produce our product. And those that would said, hey, we have to make a $200,000 investment in equipment to make the product your size, because we might have the base equipment, but we need to customize it to your product. And that's why I think it's so important to begin with that end in mind, so that you're not self-producing in a way that doesn't actually scale up through the manufacturing process.
That's a really good point and a hard-learned lesson that you had there. But certainly looking at, as you're trying to create your food, build the food, to look at it with the in manufacturing in mind, and that sometimes is a failure there. But it is key to really understand what sorts of manufacturing assets are out there and available, and the various, the economics of each method.
Yeah, so important.
So I think one thing as a founder and an entrepreneur is to look at, there are so many uh, components to any business, and many people are expert in one or two or three. Few are expert in everything. And so I think that one key to looking at manufacturing, is that your area of expertise, or is that actually your passion for your brand? Or is that something that you would want to outsource, possibly through a manufacturing partner?
Well, and Rick, something you say that I like to share as well is no one starts a business to run a supply chain.
Indeed. Yeah.
So when can you lean on people who are interested in running a supply chain when you're a founder and need to maybe focus on the sales and marketing of your brand?
Yeah, I think that's so key, right? Because even from my experience, it seems like there's the two main pillars of running the business of sales and marketing. And then next to it are operations and supply chain. And often those are moving at two different speeds in an organization. And that was one of our things that we had to balance at T Squares, was having the operations control and balance with our sales and manufacturing. It meant that, because we were self-manufacturing, we couldn't just infinitely increase our production rate. So if we were to take on, we had to call with Costco, and essentially for us to scale the product to a volume to promote with Costco would not have worked in our manufacturing strategy. So we ended up having to say no and turn that down, because we did not have the equipment to actually manufacture the product. And then if we were, just in a single rotation, and then scale way back down.
So in looking at trying to find the right manufacturing solution, one thing that is important is to look at those costs. And the costs are not only dollar costs. You're not looking at, if you're going to manufacture yourself versus using a contract manufacturer. You don't only have the costs to capitalize the manufacturing assets, facility, equipment, lots of stainless steel, things of that sort. But also your time, and where is the founder's time better spent? Is it on the innovation strategy, sales and marketing side, and also investor relations, versus in the day-to-day manufacturing business? Secondly, in most companies, we have a limited amount of working capital. Where do we want to deploy that? Is it in the fixed assets for manufacturing, or is it in promoting the brand, doing innovation, things of that sort? And where is the expertise? As Katie mentioned, did you get into this in order to run a supply chain, or is your expertise in some other one of those components to running a business? Um, Looking at compliance and certifications, that's a big deal and very difficult for operations to really achieve with regard to third-party food safety audits, and then also certifications if you're looking for different types of claims with regard to your product, whether it be organic, non-GMO, gluten-free, and such. And finally, where do your investors want you to be focused as far as your time and deploying the money that they're putting into the business?
Well, and it certainly feels like more people choose to co-manufacture rather than self-manufacture because having that outsourced resource is helpful in time and cost management. And it's rare that we do come across a client who's looking to self-manufacture. It's not uncommon, it's just less common because it is such a feat to take that on.
Yeah, definitely see that. I see the same thing with brands who are in our community as well.
So what we want to talk about here between Katie and I is looking at what is it that you need to look for if you're going to look for outsourcing your manufacturer to a co-manufacturing partner. And Katie is our expert at this. She does searches on behalf of brands every single day, looking for the best fit partners for them to make what it is that they're wanting to have made and packaged. So the four key components that we've identified is one, the capability of the manufacturer to make your product, capacity, right size capacity for you. Third, the location, based on what where you are, where your market is, and where your materials are. And then finally, is it a good fit as far as the culture to that company to your company, because they are going to be one of your most important partners, and then their credibility in the industry. Are they a good, upstanding potential partner for you?
Yeah, this is so key. And Kay, I'd love for you to dive into like what to actually look for because you are an expert kind of in that process of finding them.
Yeah, well, and I liken it to matchmaking, where, a client comes to us and says, we have this list of things we're looking for in a contract manufacturing partner. And we go out into the world and see how many of those boxes we can, check off and say, this is a match, this is a match. What are you willing to compromise on? Because it's rare that, there's a perfect match out there, but we're looking for that best fit, right? And is there enough flexibility on either side? Can it make sense for everyone, the client, the brand, and the manufacturing partner? And so first, do they have the right equipment to make your product in the packaging you're looking for? With the claims and certs you need, right? If you're gluten-free, do they have that gluten-free certification? It's a pretty quick yes or no, does this make sense to have a conversation? But making sure that they have some expertise in your product category. Have they produced a product like this before? Or if you're working on innovation, is it something that's similar? Do they have equipment that they're comfortable with, that they're trained on? And similarly with the packaging, if you're trying to introduce a new packaging style, is it like what they have in-house, or are you going to be exploring that, new packaging or innovation together? And that's where you build that trust and confidence that Rick talked about in number 4 on the last slide. Um, but it really is that, does this make sense for everyone to partner up?
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's so important, just like aligning it because it has to be a two-way relationship. So like you liking it to matchmaking.
And then capacity. So oftentimes, we're asking the question, do you have the capacity to make this today? Um, that's great. What about capacity in a year or 2 years? Because you don't just want to be with a co-man for, 6 months. You typically are looking for that longer term partner. So while you are looking for them to meet those current needs, you're also hoping that they can grow with you, help your brand grow, and help you increase, your volumes and scale your business. So that is certainly part of thinking about the long term as you kind of engage or interview, co-mans as you're selecting them, is what does this look like, a few years down the road?
And part of that too is just are they buying into your opportunity? Do they want to grow with you? Now, it's not uncommon and to have an initial co-man that may have the MOQs that can accommodate an emerging brand. But then later, as you scale the business, you do end up transitioning to a larger co-man. And so that is a possibility. But obviously, if you have a partner that's willing and wanting to grow with you, that relationship is valuable.
How do you balance the need for having almost like a pilot facility that will start manufacturing your product if you're a new brand, and then also either that same or different partner being able to scale up your production and hopefully bring it down cost?
Yeah, actually, some large manufacturers do have pilot facilities on site where they can do small scale production and they use it primarily for product development purposes, but they could do production. Another possibility are university food processing centers. Some of those are set to accommodate actual food production, and that can be a good place for an emerging brand to begin.
Okay, that's a really good point then, because I know, part of our issue with T squares in our first manufacturers, we had I think two or three production runs, and then we had this silent period where they wouldn't respond to us. And it turns out they got a 1 million bar order from another energy bar company that was going to take up all the line time, and we effectively got booted out because our business was not large enough, and they got a better opportunity, essentially.
The communication there is tough if they're not sharing with you their capacity or availability, and you're planning on them being able to produce.
Yeah, I mean, and with that too, like how do you think about like finding the companies who, or the manufacturers who you can have a good relationship with that like can grow with you over time? Because I know, of course, right, like you want to find someone who's probably you can be local, build a relationship with so that you can have that successful relationship with them.
Yeah, it does come down to communication and just what the arrangement and agreement is with regard to your manufacturing agreement. What sort of, how do you schedule production? What sort of lead times are required? What sort of production capacity are they reserving for you, or what are you committing to there? Part of that really comes to this slide here is number one, how credible are they as a partner? What's their reputation in the industry? And talking to others who know of them, learn about that. How communicative are they? We always recommend that you have regular, what I call business review meetings with your co-manufacturer, an opportunity for you to update them on your business and what's happening, wins you've got, challenges you have, new innovations that you're looking at, and to learn more about their business. What's happening with them with regard to capacity and capabilities. Most manufacturers are not particularly good at marketing themselves, so sometimes you really have to draw it out of them. What new toys have they got that might be a fit for your particular brand? And then also understanding their stability, both from a financial standpoint and a management standpoint, and their reputation for integrity. And then are they a good fit? I mean, is this the kind of person that you want to be, so to speak, married to? As Katie said, we're in the matchmaking business here, so we want to make sure that it's a good fit from a culture. What your mission is as a business. Does it fit with what their mission is? Do you share values with them?
Yeah, I think this is so important.
And as Rick was saying, having a co-man be able to communicate with you as far as their plans, we tell clients all the time, you can't trust their website. They're not updating it. So make sure you are having those conversations and asking them what their plans are for future investment or what innovation they're looking to, move into, because maybe that aligns with your innovation projects and or influences where you might be expanding your brand. So if you can produce multiple products with one co-man, that's another benefit. But from the start, as soon as you reach out to a co-man with an inquiry, this is my project, can we talk? You can tell kind of from the start if they're going to be responsive, engaged, interested, wanting to learn more, if they have good questions for you about your business and your products. Um, those are the co-mans that we find tend to match with our clients more often than not, and are those co-mans that respond more quickly and stay engaged.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I was on the search for a while. I would love to find manufacturers that are credible and good cultural fit. So how do you go about kind of finding a good contract manufacturer?
Well, we do a lot of command searches and we'll reach out to 30, 40 commands, right? To hopefully narrow it down to a pool of 1 to 3. So it does take, casting a wider net to capture those commands that are going to be a good fit for your business. And it can take a couple weeks, right? This isn't, speed dating where you might leave with a co-man partner after one conversation. It takes time to build that uh, relationship, share information. But I would say getting off the phone too and visiting their location, right? Meeting in person, seeing their facility, and understanding who their team is as a whole.
That makes sense.
So, and I'll talk about the first couple here, and then Katie, who's our expert on the third, can talk about that. But how do you go about finding the right partner? And the first method is just to get out there and work it yourselves. Doing searches online, attending trade shows, networking events. And then the secondly is talking to people in the business. What manufacturers do they know? Attend the manufacturing events and like PLMA and things of that sort. Joining such as Food Bevy, it's a great opportunity there to network with the right people that might be able to help bring you the right resource. The third is to outsource that through, and I'll let Katie jump in here as far as the options that exist there.
Yeah, well, at JPG, we've, gathered our years of command searches, trade show data, uh, all of the connections that our team has with commands and built out a command database. So we're trying to, understand who's out there across different product categories and all of the different capabilities they have. And then offers, services, command searches, where we're really helping to vet those commands and narrow that pool for you. There are other, sources out there like Partner Slate, um, Keychain. People are trying to make this a less painful process for brand owners, so that they can find that good match for a manufacturer. Food and bev is really a friendly community, and people want brand owners to be able to produce their product and get it on shelf because it lifts everyone up. Um, it is a painful process and it can take time. So I would say just stick with it and keep having as many conversations as you can. Something else you can do too is kind of work backwards. So if you know what packaging you want to go into, or maybe the equipment manufacturer that you might use, like Jordan, you were talking about slabbing, who makes the slabbing equipment, reaching out to those partners and saying, what co-man has your equipment on site, or who's using, this packaging? can you make any referrals to a co-man who's, engaged with you as a manufacturer supplier?
Yeah, I think that's a really good resource to do that, to be able to find those partners. One thing I'm always curious about is for any project that you're doing, like how many options realistically are companies finding who can manufacture their product? I know you say you might reach out to 40 companies, but when you go through searches, do you really find that like there's only three companies who have the capabilities and the capacity, and you have to pick from like three out of the dozens? Or are there like dozens available? Just to get a sense of like, you're doing all these searches, like what is the supply look like from a manufacturing standpoint?
Yeah, let me caveat it with it depends on the product category. The more unique your product, the fewer commands there are going to be who can produce that. It also depends on capacity, right? So if a product is kind of hot right now and everyone's looking to produce it, there might not be as much line time that's available across commands. Um, on average, we'd say there's probably 1 to 3 commands that our clients end up kind of doing a final vetting of towards the end of a command search. And that is because we are trying to help, again, narrow that funnel, right? And make sure that we're working through those qualification steps from uh, do you have the equipment? Can you run the packaging? Do you have the certifications? Do you have the time to onboard? What kind of partnership are you looking for? Turnkey or tolling, right? There are so many steps and questions to answer to find that partner. So it can narrow pretty quickly, based on the multiples of factors that you're trying to get answered to find that right partner.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. So once you kind of find the partner, I think one thing that I'm always interested in is like thinking about the larger strategy of aligning then like how you're manufacturing with your business goals. Can you go through details on that?
Yeah. So, you were talking earlier about making sure that your demand and supply match. And that can be tricky, right? Because as much as you want to sell your product, you have to have product to sell. So making sure that your team is connecting and you're having those uh S and OP meetings, sales and ops, right? And making sure everyone understands what the capacity is for production, how much product there is to sell, and when it'll be available. So we've listed here scalability, flexibility, visibility, all very key in making sure that you have a supply chain that works to get product to that warehouse, to the distributors, and onto shelves.
Yeah, I think that is really key to have all those points. Awesome.
And then something else we want to talk about is making sure that the quality is there as you scale. So if you're self-manufacturing or working in a commercial kitchen, it's up to you how your product is looks, at the end of that production process. And you have to trust a co-man partner to maintain that quality for you as get more hands off on production and hopefully scaling your business. Rick, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I think that it's really key to have good systems in place with the communication with your co-man, that you've got good product specifications that they're producing to, that you've got good raw material specifications that helps assure that you're starting at the right spot. And then that they've got good systems in place with regard to during a production run, doing the appropriate quality checks, doing sensories of finished goods, collecting the right data that's going to assure that you're getting the same product every time. And then the evaluation of the finished goods, having a finished good specification with a target and an acceptable range, as far as whether it has to do with flavor, color, texture, and then also the analyticals that it's meeting, that you're producing something to your nutritional label. and with the right ingredients and not misbranding the product.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I hear a lot of people, question saying like, hey, will my product be taste different when I work with a manufacturer from when I'm in, a commercial kitchen making it myself? Or will it taste better and have a better quality? I'm curious your experience with that when someone's moving from maybe a small test kitchen or manufacturing a farmer's market for farmers markets to working with a contract manufacturer, how the product typically changes.
Well, it can change, but that's something that you can control together with your manufacturing partner. And in some cases, they may be able to enhance it for you. One thing that's key is that if there are changes that need to be made to the process or tweaking a formula or whatever, so that your manufacturing partner can make it to assure and will that it is your IP. If they make changes, you continue to own those formulas and processes as the brand, and that so that you're protecting what you've invested your sweat, blood, and tears into developing.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then with that, I know as companies are growing, it's not just for manufacturers, but when they're getting on retail shelves, you start have to consider things like the stability of the product over time, having a longer shelf life. At the same time, companies are very conscious. I think more consumers in like the natural channel space are conscious of even different preservatives that are in the products or how it might have to change to affect the taste and quality. Are you seeing those conversations come up just in terms of things like I know a lot of companies are looking at, not using certain seed oils or try not to use even labeled natural flavors, but more, you know, extracts from products. And I'm kind of curious how those conversations are affecting things.
Yeah, good question there. I think that a lot of again depends on product category, but there's things that can be done to assure that you're meeting what your guardrails are for your brand, acceptable ingredients, but yet having a product that has the shelf life that you need to be commercial. And whether that be with ingredients or processes, how it's made, or packaging, things that can be done with the type of packaging that you're using that can help protect the product for a longer period on the shelf. And then just doing those shelf life studies, whether they be real time or accelerated studies, just to help validate and confirm that you're getting the shelf life and that the consumer experience is going to be what you want it to be when they pull it off the shelf and eat it.
Makes sense. I mean, you talked earlier about I shared my experience with T squares and losing our manufacturer, which kind of threw everything in a loop. And so I, love to kind of walk through and, how do you build redundancy in the business and future-proof those operations?
Yeah, and we get asked a lot, should I have co-man redundancy, right? Do I need essentially a backup co-man? Um, Most businesses won't have the scale to support that, especially as they're starting and you're growing your business and expanding into retailers. Um, you're trying to meet an MOQ at a singular command to start, right? And make sure that you can maximize your relationship, your production with a single command. Um, as you scale, and if you can support that, absolutely. Um, what you can do with your current command, though, is contingency or disaster planning. And that's certainly something you should discuss and have in place that your command should be able to help you plan for. Where redundancy can be really helpful is with your ingredient suppliers and your packaging suppliers as well. Whether lead times are constrained, materials are constrained, you don't want the pinch point to be with your ingredients or packaging getting into your co-man for production.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense on there. I mean, do you also recommend that like when founder I saw this happen a lot where like founders will do a search and the first person that says yes, they kind of just stop and go with them. Do you recommend kind of vetting still and having like two or three other companies who could produce your product so that when or if something happens, you don't have to start the search from scratch then?
I think it never hurts to stay in conversation with a co-man who is able to produce your product, right? Or maybe even a co-man who you can't meet their MOQ today, but you may be able to in the future. Stay in touch. Let them know how your business is going, how you're growing, so that when it is time to continue to scale up, when you can meet their batch sizes and their MOQs, you're primed and ready to go. Um, and if it's just, once or twice a year, hey, we're doing well, how are you? It's that piece of the networking that, is helpful in any business and for any brand to stay in touch with those people who may be able to help them in the future.
I love that. Well, this has all been so helpful. As we're rounding things out, I'd love to hear any key takeaways or experiences that either of you have had that you want to make sure that brands know as they're going through their manufacturing search and relationships. Maybe starting with Rick, if there's any kind of key things that you've learned that are really will make or break a relationship.
One thing I always preach is just communication, and whether it's positive communication or negative communication, I always tell partners, if you have bad news for me, I want to hear that, because perhaps together we can collaborate and find solutions. Don't be fearful of sharing that. So I think it's really key to build the mechanisms of communication and adhere to them, and be very proactive in doing that. I think that, and that's not just with your manufacturer, but with your entire supply chain, with ingredient suppliers, with packaging suppliers, and on obviously on your customer side, and distribution partners and such as well. Just continuing to stay up and stay in touch, stay informed, and make sure that they're informed with what your business is doing.
Sage advice. How about you, Katie?
Yeah, so I would say during your search, it can be painful, right? Trying to find that best fit co-man. So stick with it and just continue to ask those people in that community and within that product category if they have any recommendations, anyone you can talk to, right? Continue to network, continue to reach out to additional resources. There will be a fit out there for you. But I know a lot of founders and brand owners can get frustrated that it takes time to find that partner. But again, if we think of it like matchmaking, it's okay to spend the time and find that good match rather than rushing into a decision with a partner.
Perfect. I love that. And I think it's so valuable too. Rick, Katie, thanks so much for being on and talking about manufacturing. And so anyone who's watching us or listening, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. Happy to connect you to the JPG Resources team. They gave you some great points on how to go about finding and working with manufacturers yourself. If you need help or support throughout that process, they already have the resources and database and list to start your journey to make it a lot easier. So feel free to reach out. Thanks again.
Thanks, Jordan.